An old man lay on the ground, blood dripping from his mouth. A boy stood speechless as he stared at his grandfather's body, severed in half. Yet no tears came. He watched his home burn, realizing the only family he had was gone. He thought himself a terrible human for feeling no sorrow. Just weeks ago, he had been happy farming alongside his grandfather. He had told him about finding a fox den near some rabbits while searching for herbs. The boy killed the fox and brought it back for dinner. His grandfather asked about the baby rabbits, and the boy admitted he left them unharmed, though their mother was nowhere to be found. His grandfather praised him for sparing the young and made him promise one thing: to never reveal the true nature he hid within himself. But now, with his grandfather gone, the boy whispered an apology. He had no intention of keeping that promise. For the first time, he revealed his true demonic nature. In Zhongyang County, guards escorted prisoners, petty criminals and mountain bandits. From a nearby building, a man noticed the boy had his own carriage and thought he looked about the same age as the third prince. Another man warned him not to underestimate the boy, for he was the most dangerous of them all, the infamous Scythe Killer Demon, who had slaughtered many. Unfazed, the man considered him a perfect candidate. Young, dangerous, and someone no one would care for if he died on the job. Suddenly, someone hurled a rock at the boy's head, shouting that he deserved divine punishment. Blood trickled down his forehead, yet when he looked up, his beauty shocked the man. He could easily be mistaken for a woman. Rushing downstairs for a closer look, the man smirked. He had found exactly who he needed. That night, in Zhongyang County's inner castle, the boy sat in his cell, frustrated. He had finally found the man who killed his grandfather, but his opponent was unlike the others, far stronger. Even if he tried again, he knew he would lose. If only he could learn martial arts, perhaps then he could avenge his grandfather. Suddenly, smoke filled the air. A strange aroma forced him into slumber. The man from earlier entered his cell, reaching for him, but the boy shattered the chains on his feet and glared coldly. He lunged forward to attack, but the man swiftly struck his pressure points, immobilizing him. As he fell, he wondered if this martial artist was connected to his grandfather's murder. The resemblance was uncanny, though this man lacked the scar. Another figure entered, addressing the man as Guard Cam. He asked if this boy was the candidate he had mentioned. Cam urged him to wait outside, but the newcomer, the prince, refused, insisting he had never been inside a prison before. Curious, the prince ordered Cam to prop the boy against the wall so he could see his face. Smiling, the prince revealed his own face. The boy froze in shock. They looked identical. The prince explained that the boy was on death row and would be executed in 2 days. The boy, unfazed, simply nodded as if he already knew. "The world is unfair," the prince said. "We look alike, yet I am a prince, and you are a condemned man." Then he offered him a deal, to temporarily become the third prince of the great Mok Sword Manor. The boy was in disbelief. "You'll live the life of a prince, a life most men can only dream of," the prince continued. "When it's over, you'll receive wealth and freedom." Guard Cam then held out a red pill. Suspicious, the boy asked if it was poison. Cam explained it was a safeguard. They didn't trust him. If he succeeded, they would give him the antidote. Believing fate had given him a second chance at revenge, he swallowed the pill. Looking at the prince, he asked, "Am I really being given a second chance?" "A wise choice," the prince said, ordering Cam to release his restraints. With a few swift motions, Cam undid the pressure points and handcuffs. The boy exhaled in relief. The prince instructed him to walk ahead, and as Guard Cam prepared to leave, he heard a sharp crack. Spinning around, he froze. The boy had snapped the prince's neck. The lifeless body slumped to the floor. "Oops," the boy said with a murderous smile. "The fake is dead now. What should we do next, Guard Cam?" Previously, moments before the Slaughtering Scythe Demon was arrested, he brought destruction to the city, killing many people. The protagonist chased after everyone in sight, smiling as he decapitated them. He killed anyone he thought had any connection to his grandfather's murder. The protagonist felt joy as he watched lifeless bodies pile at his feet. Tossing aside another severed head, he wondered what kind of face he wore while killing these people. Was this the true nature his grandfather had spoken of? If his true nature was evil, then so be it. He began killing again. Moments later, the protagonist was kicked hard in the stomach, sending him crashing into the walls. He coughed up blood and looked at his opponent. The man, impressed that he was still alive, remarked that although the protagonist had no martial arts training, he somehow managed to withstand the attack. The man lifted him by the neck and stabbed him with his blade. Blood gushed from the protagonist's mouth. The man decided it was best to kill him now, knowing he would be much harder to deal with if left alive. The protagonist was furious, beaten so easily by the man who murdered his grandfather. As he coughed more blood, he believed he was about to die. However, he did not die immediately from his wounds. Instead, he was captured and sentenced to execution. In those moments, he swore that if he ever had a second chance, he would never let it slip away. Returning to the present, just after he had killed the third prince, Guard Cam instantly grabbed the protagonist by the neck. "How dare you kill the prince? Do you really wish to die?" he growled. But the protagonist only smiled and calmly replied that it was the opposite. A stand-in was meant to substitute for the real risks and dangers. Blind obedience in such a situation would only kill him. Guard Cam sneered and asked if he had considered that he himself could kill the protagonist for daring to harm the prince. The protagonist answered that if Cam had truly wanted him dead, he would have killed him already. He believed Guard Cam had no real attachment to the prince. "Nonsense," Cam barked, slamming him to the floor. Drawing his dagger, he threatened to kill him on the spot. Still smiling, the protagonist asked, "Is that really necessary? Why wouldn't it be?" Cam replied coldly. The protagonist revealed that he had already taken poison, and only he held the antidote. If Cam wanted him alive, he would have to obey. The protagonist could fill the role of the third prince and serve as Cam's lapdog. Cam considered this, then suddenly stabbed his dagger into the ground beside the protagonist's head. "From now on," he declared, "you are the third prince of the Mok Sword clan." Relieved, the protagonist smiled. At the Mok Sword Manor, Cam warned him that he was not to meet with anyone there. If he was caught, he would not receive the antidote. Turning back with a deadly serious look, Cam said, "If you disobey or try anything, I will kill you immediately." The protagonist only gave a warm smile and agreed. Cam tossed him another pill, explaining it was a neutralizer that had to be taken every 24 hours. Without it, the poison would spread throughout his body. By sunset, the third prince's corpse should already have been discovered. As the protagonist swallowed the pill, he truly believed it a miracle that he had survived the brutal stabbing. Looking out the window, he wondered if his grandfather's spirit was watching over him, keeping him alive. He thought of the man who killed his grandfather and swore he would not die until he had his revenge. Disguised as the third prince, he planned to use this chance to learn martial arts. Smiling to himself, the protagonist vowed to grow stronger, and one day kill the man in the same way his grandfather had been murdered. The next day, the protagonist still feels lucky to have avoided death. As he eats, he thinks about how he managed to learn martial arts, but the guard Cam left behind to watch him bothers him. Cam's disciple, Go-chan, dislikes the protagonist and believes Cam has grown soft. To him, there's nothing special about a kid who hasn't even learned martial arts yet. Earlier that day, Cam told Go-chan that the protagonist had killed the real third prince. Go-chan was in disbelief, but Cam explained that his role would not change. For now, Go-chan is ordered to watch the protagonist while Cam thinks of another plan. After that, they'll discard the protagonist and side with someone else. Go-chan argues that things should be easier since the protagonist had taken poison. He should obey them. However, Cam warns him that the protagonist is a death row inmate, not the type to submit easily. Getting more involved with him will only bring trouble. Frustrated, Go-chan still doesn't understand what's special about the protagonist. Meanwhile, the protagonist continues eating, unaware of why Cam wanted him to act as a stand-in for the third prince. He's only been there a short while, Yet he realizes this place isn't as dangerous as he thought. It feels rather safe. Still, he suspects there's another reason Kim wants him to act as a substitute, though Cam hasn't revealed it. The protagonist concludes that Cam must intend to switch sides. When the protagonist steps outside, Go-chan is startled. The protagonist says he wants fresh air and needs to ask a question. Go-chan tells him to shut up and go back to his room. The protagonist insists nothing will happen if they keep it a secret. Angered, Go-chan shoves him against the door, reminding him of his place and ordering him back inside. Unfazed, the protagonist remarks that Go-chan is far weaker than Cam, then suddenly slams him to the ground with the same technique Cam once used on him. Instantly, he follows up with Cam's pressure point technique, immobilizing Go-chan. In disbelief, Go-chan wonders if the protagonist had been hiding martial arts skills all along. The protagonist, surprised that Go-chan can still move, thinks he must have done something wrong, even though he copied Cam's movements exactly. He realizes it's not so easy. Go-chan, however, now understands this boy copied an advanced technique after seeing it only once. Cam was right. The protagonist is dangerous. Go-chan sneers, reminding him about the poison. Without the neutralizer pill, he'll die a painful death. The protagonist clamps a hand over Go-chan's mouth, bites his own finger, and drips blood into it. Go-chan clutches his throat and coughs violently. The protagonist then kicks him in the head and calmly explains that he grew up gathering herbs for his grandfather. He tested countless poisons on himself, and over time, his blood developed poisonous properties. He can identify poisons by smell or taste, and most of them no longer work on him. Emitting a sinister aura, he declares that he doesn't need a neutralizer. Then, snapping back into his usual self, he remembers the question he wanted to ask. He demands Go-chan tell him more about Mok Sword Manor. He adds that only he has the antidote to his poisonous blood, so Go-chan should cooperate. At Mok Sword Manor's main hall, a doctor tends to Manor Master Mok Inden. The doctor has tried countless herbs but still cannot determine the cause of his illness. He worries that the Manor Master should have appointed a successor before falling this ill. The manor has 4 sons, and once Inden dies, blood will be spilled in the struggle for succession. The first wife, who favors the eldest son, would stop at nothing to secure the position for him. She asks how Inden is doing, but the doctor admits he still cannot identify the illness. She coldly replies that she will summon a shaman. Alarmed, the doctor insists she shouldn't resort to such measures, but she has him escorted out of the manor, dismissing his services. With a smile, she orders that the shaman will deal with the master's illness and that no one else should be allowed into the main hall. Back with Go-chan, he explains to the protagonist that this is the current state of Mok Sword Manor. The protagonist now understands and declares they are leaving. When Go-chan asks where, the protagonist replies that he is going to see the manor master. They exit the building. The protagonist now understands the plan Cam and the third prince had. They wanted him to stand in as the third prince so that the other princes would kill each other. Firstborn, Mok Yongo, is 20 years old. He has a birthmark on his left cheek, loves drinking and womanizing to the point that he goes to the tavern almost every other day. He is the least capable of the 4 siblings, greedy and cruel. Second, Mok Ilinpyeong, 18 years old. He resembles his mother and has sharp eyes. Clever and cunning, who knows what he might do to become the lord of the family. By calling these 2 to one place and putting a stand-in, me, there, provoking Mok Yunpyeong into killing the stand-in me. And then, once he becomes careless after having killed the fake, allowing the firstborn to backstab him, the 2 would end up killing each other. This would allow the other prince to win by default. In this way, regardless of who survived, it would appear that 2 brothers tried to kill each other, and both would be eliminated as heirs. Then, when the third prince appeared perfectly fine, he would gain the upper hand. It was a thoughtful and well-devised plan. However, the one variable they had not accounted for was the protagonist killing the prince. The protagonist explains that they are visiting the manor master because if he dies, it will affect his life as well. He tells Go-chan not to tell Cam. This must remain their secret. The first wife watches as the shaman arrives at the main manor. She welcomes him. He tells her that everyone within 30 paces must leave the manor, except for the guards at the entrance. Otherwise, it will bring bad luck. The shaman insists that she must also leave, but she reminds him of their deal. He agrees, promising to retrieve the master's seal and secret manual. She tells him that if he finds them, she will gift him 300 silver coins. She orders everyone to leave the manor. As she departs, she notices the fourth son, Mok Chun. She is displeased that Master Idan would fool around with a geisha. To her, giving the manor master's position to someone of such lowly blood is unforgivable. The protagonist arrives on the other side and notices the fourth son as well. Go-chan explains that the fourth son possesses outstanding martial prowess, is not lazy in his efforts, and has a character resembling the manor master's, thus receiving the most favor to become the next master of the manor. The protagonist then asks Go-chan if, by learning martial arts, he would be able to kill Guard Cam. Uneasy, Go-chan fears the protagonist has discovered their plan to abandon him. Go-chan explains that martial arts can be considered internal training. In other words, perfecting one's breathing to purify nature's energy internally in order to gather inner chi. Once inner chi is cultivated, one becomes stronger. However, inner chi cannot be gathered overnight. Cam is a first-class martial artist with over 30 years more inner chi than the protagonist. Defeating him in a short time would be nearly impossible. Moreover, Go-chan does not believe the protagonist can acquire inner chi at all, since the proper age for internal training is between 5 and 9 years old. After that, it is extremely difficult to cultivate. Go-chan smiles, trying to hold back his laughter, certain it will be impossible for the protagonist to learn inner chi. But then he suddenly realizes the protagonist is staring directly into his face. The protagonist says, "Your eyes look greedy. I feel the need to remove them." Then he smiles at guard Go-chan and tells him to become his person. Go-chan obeys. The protagonist thinks to himself that it will be difficult to bring guard Cam to his side due to the lack of trust. Go-chan then advises him that they should leave before being spotted by the fourth son. He does not like the third prince. The third prince once told him that his mother was an escort, which led to them fighting. The protagonist laughs, realizing the fourth son must be strong. He was able to defeat the third son and leave him intact. Inside the manor master's bedroom, the shaman works to heal Master Idan. He senses murderous energy surrounding the master's body, giving him only about a 50% chance of survival. However, the shaman does not care whether the master lives or dies. He only needs to complete the task for the first wife. He begins chanting, and the master's body starts to emit dark energy. His eyes begin to turn red. Suddenly, the shaman hears the door open. Alarmed by the interruption, he is thrown against the wall as the master's body releases a burst of energy. The protagonist walks past the shaman, greets the master and says, "Hello, father." The shaman orders both of them to leave. The protagonist ignores him and observes Master Idan. The shaman continues explaining to Go-chan that the murderous energy will only worsen Idan's state, pleading once again for them both to leave. Suddenly, Master Idan loses control and begins to get possessed. The shaman tells the protagonist and Go-chan to hold Master Idan down while he performs the ritual. The charm placed on Master Idan should overpower the evil spirit within him. But Master Idan seizes Go-chan, and the shaman warns them to be careful because the evil spirit can transfer onto anyone if they aren't cautious. Master Idan refuses to let go, and just as the spirit is about to transfer to Go-chan, the protagonist suddenly cuts off Master Idan's hand. Smiling, he continues severing the rest of Idan's arm to detach the spirit from his body. Go-chan is horrified, convinced the protagonist is insane and dangerous. With Idan's arm fully detached, the shaman places another charm to drive out the spirit. Go-chan quickly applies first aid to stop Idan's bleeding. The shaman grows worried. He has failed his duty, and on top of that, the master has lost an arm. He fears being blamed for the incident and tries to slip away, but the protagonist stops him with a knife. The shaman demands an explanation, insisting he must finish removing the spirit from Idan's body. He questions whether the protagonist wants the master dead as well. The protagonist ignores him and instead interrogates the shaman, asking who else is trying to kill the master. Nervously, the shaman confesses, it was the First Lady. He was ordered to use the spirit to locate the secret manual and the master's seal. Go-chan pleads with the protagonist, saying they must save the manor master. Otherwise, the first son will succeed in becoming the next head of the family, putting the protagonist's life at even greater risk. The protagonist considers this and realizes it makes sense, since he had already disrupted the First Lady's plans. Smiling, he orders the shaman to locate the manual and the seal. Both the shaman and Go-chan are shocked by his demand. If the shaman attempts the ritual again, Master Idan's life will be at even greater risk, but the protagonist doesn't care and presses him to continue. Reluctantly, the shaman agrees. Not wanting to endanger Idan further, he produces a small vessel to trick the evil spirit into believing it is the manor master. He begins the ritual. The severed hand twitches, becomes demonized, and grabs hold of the vessel. The shaman realizes that if he continues, the spirit will be freed. Grinning, he forms an idea. He tells the protagonist that Go-chan should not be present since he isn't of blood. Go-chan agrees and waits outside. The shaman resumes and completes the ritual. It succeeds. He then asks the spirit where the secret manual and seal are hidden. The evil spirit possessing the master answers, in the medicinal hall underground, beyond the front stone door. The shaman then tells the protagonist that he must cut the string binding the manor master to the vessel. The protagonist slices through it. Instantly, the evil spirit begins crawling up his leg. The shaman smiles darkly, watching as the spirit starts to possess the protagonist. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. See you in the next one.